Hello, I'm Fiona Webster, Executive Principal of Virtual School Victoria. Many of us have a sense of rushing towards the end of the year. Deadlines to meet, things to finish up, planning family or friendship events as we hurtle towards the upcoming break. But this time is also a time for highlights. At VSV, we use this time to celebrate the achievements of our students, from last week's Year 12 valedictory dinner to upcoming award ceremonies. It is important to reflect on the goals that have been attained by students of all levels. One important highlight each year is Making Waves, our annual concert of works and performances from senior music students studying at VSV. I have been reliably informed that this is the 17th Making Waves performance. I remember the first one, at VSV, with no stage and limited equipment, but with dedicated musicians and students and an appreciative audience of parents and friends. Today, in partnership with the Melbourne Recital Centre, Making Waves is being streamed live from the Primrose Salon, and that means there is a potential worldwide audience. I'd like to express my appreciation for those at the MRC, VSV's dedicated music team, the musicians, and especially all the students involved. The arts are important, and after the last couple of years, they are essential. I hope that you enjoy the concert as much as I know I will.
Hello, I'm Mark McSherry, and I'd like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather, and those of all the lands from which you may be viewing. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. Thanks, Fiona, for that introduction. Your support is always greatly appreciated. So, as Fee said, each year, Virtual School Victoria celebrates the creative work of senior music students at the Making Waves concert. For the last 3 years, in partnership with the Melbourne Recital Centre, works have been presented from here in the Primrose Salon. I'll be here to lead you through the wide variety of pieces, talk a little bit about some changes on the horizon, and introduce you to some of the remarkable young composers involved. But we're going to jump straight into the music. And we begin with strings alongside piano, flute, and percussion. We'll find out a little bit more about the piece after the performance. Here is Realisation by Alicia McFarlane. Realisation by Alicia McFarlane. Come on up, Alicia. So, first off, I believe there was some film inspiration for that piece. Could you tell us about it?
Yes. I was initially inspired by the work of Joe Hisaishi. He's a Studio Ghibli composer and film music, and I wanted to write about the importance of living in the present.
Okay, all right. And there were clearly two very separate sections there. There was the kind of the quiet one, and then it went up tempo. What were you trying to do there?
So the two sections, the first section is in a minor key and it's a lot more slower, and it's supposed to represent corporate life and the empty reality of prioritizing work over happiness.
Okay.
But the second section is in a major key. It's a lot more upbeat and lively, and it's supposed to represent the possibility of adventure.
Okay, and you were part of a mentoring program working with the quartet before this. How was that for you?
It was really amazing. We're really lucky and grateful to be given the opportunity to work along such talented musicians. And yeah, I'm really grateful. They just brought the piece to life.
Yep, and I think that is a sentiment that you'll hear often today. Thank you, Alicia. And I should explain a little bit more about that mentoring program. The Victorian Department of Education's Strategic Partnership Program has meant that the Melbourne Recital Centre, alongside Virtual School Victoria, has been able to do two things this year. First, we've conducted a number of music composition and performance masterclasses with some outstanding professional musicians throughout the year. And it's also meant that we can actually hold some direct mentoring sessions with students for this particular concert, the Making Waves concert. So Alicia was part of a mentoring session with the Flinders Quartet, one of the country's finest, alongside Lawrence Matheson on piano and Eliza Shepherd on flute, and our own Josh Milton on percussion. Our next composer, Charlotte Dickinson, who unfortunately can't be here today, also had a mentoring session, this time with the Flinders Quartet alone. And here's what she said about the experience. Working with the Flinders Quartet was unlike anything I'd imagined. The music and the story actually came to life from something generated on a piano and a computer. I learnt so much, considering I'm a percussionist who wrote for a string quartet. And it was so amazing just to hear all of their professional input that could make my vision a reality. The piece itself is called A Tale of Love and Loss, and it's based on the story of Romeo and Juliet. There are two separate movements. The first movement represents the loving start of a relationship with underlying hints of darkness becoming more prominent before moving into the second movement. The second movement displays the tragedy and the loss at the end of the Romeo and Juliet story. Here is the Flinders Quartet with Charlotte Dickinson's A Tale of Love and Loss. Charlotte Dickinson's piece, that is a lovely, lovely piece. I was at the mentoring session actually, and Charlotte was beaming in from another location. What I remember is that once the quartet did a first run of the piece, I had a view of Charlotte on screen at home, unable to express the joy and wonder of hearing her music being performed live by professional musicians. The whole session for me was worth it just for that one moment, seeing that face. Now we move away from strings and we're going to go to solo piano. Zach Lambie studied music investigation at VSV, and in that subject, students do a deep dive into a particular performance area and they choose it themselves. That leads to a recital at the end of the year, but one of the tasks throughout the year is to create music associated with the area of investigation. Now, Zach was coming in to perform today, however, things didn't go quite as planned. The pandemic still exists, I'm afraid. So we're going to go with Plan B, and we actually had a recording done of Zach performing this piece. So I'll just tell you a little bit about it. Zach's investigation topic was focused on pitch structures and performance techniques used to depict water in early 20th century solo piano works by Debussy and Ravel. It's the Impressionist school. In my composition, he says, I tried to apply what I learnt in my investigation to depict the fish pond in my front yard. I used some Impressionist compositional techniques to create the movement of the fountain, the colourful fish and water plants, and the mysterious mood of a heron coming to quietly hunt for fish. The idea to give the piece a French title was suggested to me when I was recording the piece for Making Waves. Like the Impressionist painters and composers gave their landscapes a title, I chose, wait for it, Un héron à l'étang. Thank you. Which means a heron at the pond. This is Zach Lambie, Un héron à l'étang. So that was Zach with his own piece that he wrote for music investigation. The other subject offered at VSV in Year 12 is music, style and composition. And that's where the focus is much more on understanding how music is put together and ultimately working towards creating an original piece. That's where the first couple of pieces that you heard for the strings actually today came from. Some students dream big. They write for very large ensembles, which we can't really get together for a concert like this, but some pieces are still worth showcasing. Liam Handley dreamed big, and he wrote for an orchestral setting. Liam was going to come to be here today, and I was going to have a chat to him. Just found out that he couldn't make it just before, but he has written some stuff, and I'll just go through a few things. He says that as part of his inspiration was that for the longest time he'd had a concept for a TV show, and he never really acted on it, but since he needed something to do and base some musical motives on in this piece, he decided to bring it out and dust it off a bit. And he says that his piece uses two main motives, one for a protagonist and one for the Greylands, an area themselves. I attempted to tell the story through the progression of the piece, from the protagonist's arrival and discovery of the Greylands, the friends he makes along the way, and his ultimate sacrifice at the end, where he and the lands become one. So, listening out for two specific motives, and he's writing for orchestra, which he says was the logical choice because it fitted into the fantasy genre, which he had a lot of experience with. But he also threw in some electric guitars and a bass and some synths and pads as well. So, the best line that I think he wrote was, "What was your process in writing it?" And he said, "It's a combination of mucking around at the piano and computer while also listening to an inordinate amount of other pieces for inspiration." Let's have a listen to this piece, Liam Handley's Suite for the Greylands. That was Liam Handley's Suite for the Greylands. Let's move now to a change in music style. And having been involved in the rehearsals for this next piece, if you're into different music styles, you won't be disappointed. Here's what the composer Nam Tran says about the piece. My piece consists of 3 parts based on classical orchestral music, swing jazz, and rock, which were 3 styles that the pieces I studied were associated with. The piece begins with a synth note occurring every half bar. And this synth note is played continuously throughout the entire work, acting as a pedal point for harmony to develop and contrast on top. The sound is reminiscent of a heartbeat, which is the reason why this piece is now called Heartbeat. Nam is playing in the ensemble, and he's the one who's providing that one-note synth part. Let's have a listen to Heartbeat by Nam Tran. Nam Tran and a large ensemble playing Heartbeat. And I would like to do a special shout out to my VSV colleague Paul Whitty, who had learnt the final guitar solo, been to rehearsal last week, but then again got ill. He is recovering as we speak, and a special thanks to Rowan for filling in after finding out about the gig, I think yesterday or the day before. He's come in to do that solo. Thanks, Rowan. The next item goes back from that in-your-face kind of scene and goes back into a quieter, more contemplative mood. It's again a piece for solo piano, and again it's a recording. And may I say that we have done the recordings for these pieces at Pughouse Studios, run by Nico Schwabel, and may I say that place is highly recommended. This piece is by Delilah Hart. Delilah unfortunately can't be here today, but she did send through a statement, and when I first saw the statement I thought that's way too long to read out. However, I then read it and I couldn't cut it because it is written beautifully. So I thought I'd read the entire thing. It will set up exactly what Delilah was trying to do. The Thurrock River is a very small distributary watercourse which branches off from Cann River, a narrow confluence of multiple streams originating in the Errinundra National Park. The Thurrock descends from tall sand dunes into a lazy inlet which flows to the sea only once a year. If you catch it at the right time, you may see the river releasing water into the ocean as the sandbank breaks. Over the course of 12 hours, the river can transform from a 4-metre deep tannin-stained swimming hole to a debris-filled swamp. In the summer of 2019-2020, fires originating in Wingan Inlet crossed 3 rivers to reach and annihilate the Thurrock River campground. Campers had about an hour to leave and left bikes, trailers, drying, washing and tents behind, all of which would melt in the radiant heat of the forest burning. 2 years on, upon returning to Thurrock, my family found the forest growing back fiercely and the river swollen above its banks. The rhythm of the river, as it filled, inundating the sand dunes slowly and then merging with the sea, was undeniably present despite the past carnage. This rhythm underpins my piece, Thurrock River, which was largely composed through improvisation as it merged with meditation on my countless childhood memories of the place. Solo piano felt most personal and the easiest setup with which to improvise and let ideas flow. The drone of the low notes throughout the piece is more representative of the river itself, while the melodies in high registers represent, to me at least, the different bird calls throughout the seasons, especially the calls of the yellow-tailed black cockatoos as they warn the ecosystem of a coming storm. This is Delilah Hart with their piece, Thurrock River. That's a beautiful piece with some beautiful playing. Now, we're going to go back to some strings, accompanied by piano, and for the first time today, voice. And if you haven't noticed already, we have not one, but two functioning string quartets today. This particular combination that you're going to hear now of Sue Hamilton, Shelley Heath, Catherine Turnbull and Anna Daniel have settled into what we like to call the Making Waves Quartet. And each year they are ready and eager to find out what's on the Making Waves bill for them. My continuing thanks and appreciation for their time, effort and enthusiasm. In this piece, they'll be joined by my colleague, Dr. Tim Dargaville on piano, and Ethan Oppie singing his own composition. And you'll hear very strong music theatre influences here. Here's what Ethan says about the work. My piece is about growing up and responsibility, the bittersweet feeling of both the freedom and independence that comes with adulthood. I wrote this piece originally on piano, but later scored parts for string quartet, which I feel help energise the piece. This is Ethan Oppie with Forgotten Child.
It's hard to separate the lover from the grave mistake. Four walls don't make a home. No wonder why you work alone. You sleep all through the day because the quiet of the night feels safe. Please don't ask, why do you stay? Only a mother can take her child away. Heart to brain, you defend their name, all in hope that someday they'll change. It gets better, finally good. You start thinking you misunderstood. Soon enough you'll be proven right. Here to love is to hang out to dry. Forgotten child, it's been a while. Walk with me slowly and copy my smile. Forgotten child, it's time to leave. No one is waiting at the edge of 18. Forgotten child, it's been a while. Walk with me slowly and copy my smile. Forgotten child, it's time to leave. No one is waiting, no one is waiting. 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 No one is waiting at the edge of 18.
Ethan Oppie with Forgotten Child. Lovely piece, lovely singing, lovely singing. The next setup we're going to do is going to take a little while, so I'm going to see if I can educate you about music education in Victoria at the moment. I've mentioned already music investigation and music style and composition, two subjects that students can do at Year 12 level. There is also, of course, another subject which is called music performance, and that is based on people performing, and students do a performance at the end of the year. Now, within any education system, these curriculums that have been brought together, which we call study designs, are constantly reviewed. And the VCAA, the Victorian Curriculum and Assessment Authority, decided to review the music curriculum in at the VCE level. I think it began in 2019, I think. So the beginning of the review began in 2019, before, of course, any troublesome, horrible global things happened. And I actually remember I was privileged to be on one of the large panels where we were actually discussing what was good about the current version of music education at the senior level and what might need to change. We began, I believe, in 2019. Of course, the pandemic hit. The process of looking at and investigating other types of music education, etc., was then pushed out. Now we have arrived at a new study design, and so in 2023 there's going to be a different way of students completing the VCE in music subjects. And I'm sort of sad to say that the two subjects that we've talked about already, music style and composition and music investigation, will no longer exist. However, there are great things on the horizon, because there's a lot to be enthused about, I believe, in what's going to be happening in Year 12. There is now going to be 4 choices of music subject at Year 12 level. Performance is now being split into what is called repertoire performance, so think Bach and Beethoven and Bartók and notated music, and now a separate subject called contemporary music. Think jazz, rock, groove, that sort of thing. There is also going to be a dedicated music composition subject, and that's dedicated to the creation of music, as well as a new subject called music inquiry, which is more of a sort of a holistic thing about music, where students perform, compose, and do a deep dive into an area of their own choosing and create a large project around it. And we're proud to say that VSV will be offering, along with Year 11 music, all 4 Year 12 music studies in 2023. And so I now know that there will be plenty of creative work to draw from for Making Waves next year. For now, we're going to go back to strings, or strings plus. Bonnie Rose Gibson has written for string quartet, flute, piano and vibraphone. I'd like to call Bonnie up here just to talk a little bit about her inspiration. So Bonnie, this piece is all about rain and raindrops. Where did the ideas come from?
I've always loved the rain, and I remember hearing it on the roof when I was a child and growing up, and also it gave me comfort during VCE, so I wanted to use the idea during that.
What a great idea. And did the concept of the rain and the raindrops actually affect the choice of the instruments that you chose?
Yes, definitely. I've chosen the vibraphone because it has the percussive pitter-patter sound of the rain,
yes.
And the flute is the flowing water in the melody, and the string quartet and the piano just bring it all together.
It's a beautiful thing, and I'm just going to ask you, like a few other people, you had a chance of, you were part of the mentoring session. How was it for you to be part of the mentoring with the fabulous professional musicians?
It was truly an amazing experience. I'm very grateful for them to be playing my piece. They make it sound amazing. I'm so thankful that I was be able to be a part of this.
Yep.
And it's been amazing.
Yep, and it's a lovely, lovely piece. Could I get the audience now to listen carefully to the rain and the raindrops in this piece by Bonnie Rose Gibson called Rain in the Making. A lovely, lovely piece, and I think we all heard the raindrops there. Special thanks to Zoe, Helen, Wilma and Jenny from the Flinters Quartet, as well as Peter, Eliza and Josh for that particular performance. I've mentioned the mentoring program a couple of times, but I've mentioned it in terms of the quartet, and that's how, and we've heard some composers talking about that the sessions themselves. The mentoring actually went further, and a number of people who were actually playing solo instruments also got a chance to be mentored as well. Zach, who we heard earlier on film, was mentored by Louisa Breen for piano. And Odie, who we were going to meet in a little minute, also had a session with Nat Bart. And the one other person who was in the solo category for mentoring was our next performer, Felix Gilmore. And he was doing music investigation, and he had the chance to be mentored by Melbourne-based percussionist Peter Neville, who I believe was very, very impressed with the piece. Here's Felix Gilmore's music investigation topic: an investigation into the use and exploration of rhythm by composers of solo Western art music percussion repertoire from the 20th century onwards. And here's what Felix says about his writing process. The piece originated as an improvised work that showcased irregular time signatures, polyrhythms, tuplets, metric modulation, and microrhythms. After recording myself playing it, I then transcribed ideas from the solo into sheet music. After much revision, I have created the most complete iteration of the work that fully encompasses my original intention. I mentioned that this is for solo. And what instrument is Felix playing? He's playing a snare drum. That's it. And he says this about the piece, just in terms of trying to get your head around it. At the beginning of the piece, you hear a strong opening statement consisting of cacophonous rim shots and dynamic rolls. Later, you will hear a melody and several unique variations of it. Eventually, via a metric modulation, we arrive at the B section of the piece, an American-style, militaristic, rudimental drum cadence. Hidden in this cadence is the main melody once again, but in the new, completely contrasting style. I'm intrigued. Let's hear Improvisation for Solo Snare Drum by Felix Gilmore. Felix Gilmore, improvisation for solo snare drum, which is no longer an improvisation. Who knew that all of those sounds had come from one drum? Okay, we're going to go back to Pughouse Studios for another recording. Again, it's going to be a piano solo. One thing before we hear it, the piece itself actually goes for about 7 minutes. We've actually had to cut it down a little bit. The composer is Odie Evans. Let's hear a little bit about the inspiration. Hi Odie, I only met you about an hour ago. G'day.
G'day.
I believe that this piece is about, or relates to two people in your life.
Yeah, yeah.
What were you trying to do?
Well, so one of them is my best friend who actually passed away 2 years ago, but it's sort of honouring and celebrating his memory and his energy and spirit. And sort of the other person, it's also, they're a very special person in my life, and it's sort of, I don't know, a tribute to them, and sort of, they remind me a lot of the ocean, hence the name. And so I've sort of tried to capture that quality of a wave just about to crash. So it's sort of those two people intertwining into a musical piece, yeah.
Excellent. And I know that you do use improvisation as part of the creative process.
Yeah, I like to noodle at the piano for extended periods of time and see what happens. And I latch on to a musical idea and expand that and use like more concrete techniques to evolve that. And this one sort of, this probably evolved from, I don't know, maybe 3 years of improvising and just finding an ostinato and building onto that.
Mm-hmm. And talking of ostinatos, I'm hearing quite a Philip Glass influence.
Yeah,
Important?
yeah. I listened to a lot of Philip Glass when growing up. Probably my major musical influence. I've expanded more to like Hani Irani and Nils Frahm now, but I think Philip Glass remains at sort of the core of my style and musical sound.
Lovely. Let us now hear a slightly cut down version of Odie's piece, Ocean Ashes. I think we can all see there Odie's passion and commitment to their art. Okay, time to go back to some live sounds. And this one is slightly different. It's by Junaid Eastman, and here's what Junaid said of the piece, all right? Most of my music is ambient or dissonant. So when I started writing this piece, I wanted to try and write something that was a little different. At one point, I walked into the kitchen and my dad was using a tub of tea as a shaker. So I recorded its sound and really solidified the piece in a direction quite different than before. So this piece is about having fun while learning new things about making music. Now, that's what Junaid has said, but I think there's a lot more going on here. I was at rehearsals, because what this piece is about, to me at least, is creating kind of wide atmospheres or soundscape blocks. When you listen, I recommend you think in terms of overall blends of sounds rather than focusing on a particular melody or a small little complexity here or there. But I ask you to pay attention to one particular sound, and that's the celeste, or more accurately, the celesta. It may look like an upright piano, a small one, but it actually has metal bars in it and produces this unique bell-like tone. I know it's the first time I've ever been near one. I actually played it the other day, and maybe it's the first time most of us here have heard it played live. It is unmistakable. Junaid is at the piano in this ensemble and doing a little bit of vocal work as well. Let's hear Junaid Eastman's piece, Desert Flowers. Junaid Eastman's piece, Desert Flowers. And isn't the Celesta great? It was, sorry Tim, but yeah, it was worthwhile hunting one down. Thank you MRC, and thank you, I believe, the MSO who provided it. Okay, may I declare this one thing? I don't think we've had enough jazz in this concert, so we're going to make up for it. We're going to go to a video, but this time it's of a jazz big band, and I'm going to get Kylie Cheer up here to talk about the piece. Hi Kylie. Okay, first question. The name of this piece is called Pastor Disaster. I want you to please explain.
Yeah, so I think it was a year ago, our school organised a tour for our jazz bands, and I am in one of the jazz bands. So in the tour, they gave us cabins to sleep in, and in those cabins were kitchens. So when you put teenagers in kitchens without adult supervision, some bad stuff is going to happen, and that's exactly what happened. There was a trumpet player who decided to try and cook pasta without knowing how to cook pasta, and I think some of my bandmates said it was not that edible.
And I believe that you were actually, in writing this for big band, there are solos in it, improvised solos, and there was you were aiming for those people who made the Pastor Disaster to actually be doing the solos, yeah?
Yeah, so improvised solos are a big part of jazz, and unfortunately the person who actually cooked the pasta isn't doing jazz anymore. So, but I wrote a trumpet solo to sort of represent them.
Very nice.
The other solo is it was actually for tenor saxophone, but they're not really used to playing at the fast speed that I wrote it for. So we got an alto player who's actually also involved in the night.
Right, okay. So everyone's there together.
Yeah.
And I just love the concept of a Pastor Disaster. And musically, I know that you're actually using some little melodic ideas which are in different ways, yeah?
Yeah, there's this one melodic idea I've used throughout, and that's sort of to create unity within the piece, sort of tie it all together. And this melodic motif I've actually hidden in a lot of places. So it's in the foreground, the melody, but it's also as, I've included it as a backing figure behind the solos. So
beautiful.
Listen out for that.
Listen carefully. All right. Let's have a look now at Kylie's piece. Kylie's playing keyboards in this in the film, and this is a piece being played by Caulfield Grammar School's big band under the direction of Lachlan Davidson. Here is Pastor Disaster. Pastor, Disaster Indeed by Kylie Cheer. There's great stuff there. And I think that clip is also an indication of the partnership that VSV has with other schools. Most students studying music with us attend regular bricks and mortar schools and do one music subject with us. And we're always grateful for the support that their home school can offer to students in pursuit of their musical goals. In this case, the performance was put together specifically for this concert. We have 2 more items in the concert today. The next one returns to the world of music theatre. It's by Amy Zwag and it is, may I say, a stunner. The plan was for Amy to sing her own work, but unfortunately that has proved impossible for today's performance. So we are pleased to present the work with a stand-in singer. Fem Belling, one of the great voices in the country, who got the music a day or 2 ago. Here is what Amy has said as part of the official documentation for the music style and composition course. She says she wanted to explore repetition and variation of several complementary melodic motifs within texturally contrasting musical sections, building to 2 points of climax. Sure, that's really good for the assessment. However, I think there is a hell of a lot more going on here. This is, in fact, a great composer at work. This is Amy Zwag's Drifting.
I'm on a sailboat drifting along, watching the world get smaller and smaller each day. But I swear that I'm still, and they're the ones drifting away. Sometimes the waves make me seasick, for stillness I long. Knowing the ocean is not where I really belong. Sometimes the wind picks me up and I soar through the air, but it flees and I fall just to find that my sail has a tear. If I turn the rudder just 1 degree, my path is forever altered and I'll never know if I made the right choice, if this was the right way to go. To go. So many sailors speed past me and smile every day. Motors too loud to hear me warn, they're going the wrong way. 'Cause I lift my eyes to the stars who will guide me through the night. But they're busy chasing a star that's just a satellite. And there's so many people calling my name. Are they just waving or crying for help? I don't know. So I take them on board, but my deck begins to overflow. If I sail on by, am I sealing their fate? Will I just start to sink if I take on more weight? If I do make it through, did I rescue too few? For every person save, there's another I lose. That's the cruelty of choice. How am I meant to choose? Who let I drift away? There's a storm brewing on the horizon, and I'm barely afloat as it is. The water is starting to rise, and all of us die if my ship goes down. How can I stand still when everyone's drifting away?
That is a great piece, and thanks again to Fem for stepping in at the last minute. A remarkable performance. Thank you. We have one final piece to round out today's show, but before we do, just some thanks. To Fiona and her exec at VSV, we can't do this without your support. To teachers who have volunteered their time today, Catherine Reid and John Bartley, generally wrangling people around the place. Thank you so much. To the music team, those who you have seen on stage today, Dr. Tim Dargaville and Dr. Tim Nikolsky and regular Josh Milton, and those behind the scenes, Peter, Jackie, Matt and Renee, and especially Paul Whitty, get well soon, and everyone here at the Melbourne Recital Centre. The partnership with VSV has been a game changer in the way that we think about what we can offer music students, and it is to be cherished. So thanks to, from the MRC, Bennett, Matt, Straff, John, Andy, Sam, Dougal, Peter and Wojtek, and from 5Stream, who are actually taking care of the streaming services here, Alex, Jenny and Caitlin. And one special thanks to Belinda Ash, one of the great coordinators here. She is our pipeline to the MRC. Thanks for everything and for keeping us on schedule. She's booked in next year's date already. To all the musicians playing today, all recorded previously, it's been a privilege to witness some of these performances take shape. The care, the communication and the dedication of all involved is remarkable. And of course, the students themselves. It's equally as remarkable to hear and see what young people can do. And for those who don't know, the Year 12 results are out, I think, on Monday. Remember that these are purely academic results. And I often feel that days like today reflect the true student achievement. So with all that said, we've had a lot of strings today. We've seen them as a standalone quartet, we've seen them used and integrated into other ensembles, but we haven't seen them being used quite in this way as our final piece. It is by Louisa Hickey. And I can't think of a better way of finishing a concert, but maybe that's because of my own cultural heritage. Louisa says this: Potato Taxi is a set of 3 folk tunes from Scotland, the US and Australia. And the Australian tune is in fact by Louisa herself. The melodies for each are arranged and adapted to suit a more modern style of folk performance, drawing upon jazz and classical influences to increase the further reach of the music. The name of the set, Potato Taxi, Sounds as if it should have been some sort of inside joke or a secret code. However, Louisa says, unfortunately, there is no conclusive reasoning behind the name, and it was just born of the pure chaos that is Celtic folk music. We hope you enjoyed the performance, she says, and she recommends the tapping of feet. Louisa Hickey in a string trio with Potato Taxi. Louisa Hickey, look, it does an old Celtic heart a great service here. That's the end of the concert. I'm going to bid you farewell, and I don't know about you guys, but I feel like a Guinness. Good night, see you later, and we will see you next year.